guys, Joe here, and I thought it'd be really good to do a video on Drift versus Drift Pro. What is the main difference between the two? Now, hopefully you've gone and you've actually seen the two product pages and you've seen kind of the difference in features, okay? And maybe you watched the sales video and that kind of shows you a little bit, but that's obviously fast-paced. So I thought it would be good to just do a quick video to talk with you in real life about what is Drift and what is Drift Pro, okay? Now, first off, let me say that when you buy Drift Pro, you actually get Drift, okay? So when you purchase Drift Pro, Drift Pro has all the features of Drift, but the implementation is quite different, as we'll see shortly. But Drift has its place as well. So when you buy Drift Pro, you will get Drift included, okay? Now, if you've already bought Drift and later on you decide you want to upgrade to Drift Pro, well, guess what? You can actually upgrade to Drift Pro. So there is that. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory. This was probably about 6 weeks ago. I was on a Hangout, and quick plug for our Friday Hangouts. If you're not joining those, they are awesome. Just join in on Zoom. We chat. A lot of times I show sneak peeks of stuff I'm working on, just like I'm going to talk about right now. But anyway, so about 6 weeks ago, I was giving a demo of Drift. It's actually what Drift Pro is now. But before it was just Drift. I just had one product. And users loved the power and the things that we could do with it. They were blown away. But I could tell that users also wanted something simpler. Okay, some novice power users were like, this is amazing. More novice users were like, wow, that's really cool, but the interface kind of scares me, right? I just want something a little simpler. And I also had some users that had some really early alpha versions from years ago of Drift, and they also did like the simplicity because there is a place for both, right? Drift Pro has a lot of great power, but man, it would be nice just to drag on a page just for quick, simple things. So I went kind of back to the drawing board, and as we have it now, we now have two products. We have Drift and Drift Pro. So without further ado, let's jump on in and kind of show you the difference on what the fundamental philosophies are behind the two, behind the implementations. I'm not going to go into all the features. We have a lot of other videos that talk about the features of Drift. I just want to get the core of what the difference is between Drift and Drift Pro. Okay, so here we have just a super simple setup, a demo for you. And all it is, right now I have no drifts on this page at all. We just have a green square. And let's animate that green square, okay? Now this is using Foundation 6. However, Drift does work in any theme, okay? And while I'm just animating a container here, you can animate whatever you want. You can animate images. You can animate all kinds of things. Make sure you check out the other Drift videos. But we're just going to animate this green square for now. And the easiest way to do that is with the Drift Animate stack. So I'm going to drag Drift Animate onto the page. And as you notice, when I add Drift Animate, there's a drop zone. And anything you add into this drop zone will get animated. Think of it as Drift Animate is just a box. And whatever you add into it, that box, the entire container, is going to animate. Okay? So in this case, let's just go ahead and we're going to leave it as scroll because you just want to have it trigger on page load. I'm going to animate 2, and let's just do 500 pixels to the right, and we'll rotate it 360 pixels just for fun. This is, I'm not trying to teach you how to use Drift here, just showing you the basic concept of how Drift works. Now, just to show you an example of the text animations inside Drift, whenever you add any of the text-based animations into Drift, instead of a drop zone, you actually have text that you can type into. So that's how the text-based animations work within Drift. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same exact animation. We're going to animate that green box with Drift Pro. Now, Drift Pro is the Drift timeline stack. Let's go ahead and add that to the page. And we'll see the first big example here of what the difference is between Drift and Drift Pro. In Drift Pro and with Drift Timeline, you just add this to the page and then you can configure it. You don't add anything into it. You basically assign elements using classes and whatnot. So then you can reuse these animations across the page. So for example, let's just animate this box, and this green box has a class of box. So just to keep things simple, we're going to stick with the scroll-based animation. So it runs on page load. I'm going to trigger the box. And then in the animation, we're going to target the box class. And let's just do the same exact animation that we did inside the drift stack. So there we go. It's just preview. As you see, it is the same exact animation that we did within Drift, but the implementation was very different. Now, obviously within Drift Pro, there are a lot more features. There's a lot more animations that we have available to us. I'm not going to be diving into those. But what is great about Drift is we have an entire timeline in Drift Pro, and I can then animate exactly what I want using classes or using the swatch selector. So in this case, what we are actually animating the box directly using Drift Pro. Whereas in the Drift demo that we saw previously, we were animating a box that was around our green box, right? We were basically animating this container that was called Drift Animate, and then anything that was inside of it would also be animated at the same time. Whereas Drift Pro is animating the actual box itself. So that's the fundamental difference between Drift and Drift Pro. Now, because we have a lot of this flexibility with using classes and we can target things, we can now take this entire timeline animation, this is a very simple one, we can assign it to multiple things. So let's just duplicate this container here. Now I have 4 boxes. And as you see there, that same animation is now applied to all 4 boxes individually. And then we could do such cool things as like staggering those animations as well, so that, all 4 of those stagger in, right? So we can easily create these animations and then reuse them and assign them to various stacks and things on our pages just by adding a class. This is very powerful. Now, since earlier I did an example with the text with Drift, essentially what you would do with Drift Pro is you would add the various text-based animations into your timeline, and then you would take a class, then you would assign that class to something like a header or, a bit of text on the page. Hopefully that shows you kind of the fundamental differences between Drift and Drift Pro. There are benefits to both of them. The easiness of the Drift stack for simple, quick animations is great, which is why it's also included when you purchase Pro. But the power of Pro and the simplicity of it, just by the power of those classes and assigning a animation to a class that you can then apply to whatever you want, is super powerful. Now, make sure you check out all the videos that we have on all the various other features, how to get to properly use the selectors and the triggers and all that jazz. So make sure you check out all those videos. The purpose of this video, again, was just to show you the difference between Drift and Drift Pro, and hopefully that did it. So hope you enjoy Drift. We will check you out in the Weaver space and go out there and make your websites great.